But of course, the reality is, when you start to look at human beings, you realize that, yes, there are external differences. There are cultural differences, there are differences of behavior, there are circumstantial differences, all these kind of things. But if you look at a human being, if you look at the human mind, and you look inside, you see that we haven't changed all that much over a long, long period of time, and much longer than those 2,500 years since the time of the Buddha. And it's really when you start to read the suttas again, the discourse, and you start to understand what people were like at the time of the Buddha, you see that essentially they were behaving just like us, just as crazy as the world is today almost. It's almost like reading the West Australian in a newspaper or something when you read those suttas, some of those crazy things that went on. But first of all, you start to see that people had defilements. They were trying to amass riches in those days. They wanted large houses. They wanted a big chariot rather than a big car. They wanted nice clothes. They wanted all these things, just like people today are preoccupied with material wealth. It was exactly the same thing 2,500 years ago. Just like people today are occupied with being praised and not blamed for things, it was the same thing at the time of the Buddha. People wanted praise. They didn't want to be blamed. Just like people then were preoccupied about having a good name and about being famous rather than being notorious or whatever, exactly the same again as today. And you go deeper down, you see that the human psyche in those days was a psyche of greed, of anger, and of delusion, just like we have those same root defilements in this day. It was exactly the same thing. And also the potential for goodness was there in those days, just like it is now. Some people were kind, some people were compassionate, some people were peaceful, some people had a propensity for these good qualities in their lives.